Hello? Awesome, this is working. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nikhil. I'm a product manager at AWS Amplify.
I'm Renee, and I'm also a product manager at AWS Amplify.
And we are super excited today to talk to you about our new next generation of backend building capabilities at Amplify, which is a new code-first developer experience. Just quick show of hands, how many people in this room have used Amplify in some capacity? Okay, so about, I'd say 25 to 30%. So that's great. So for the folks who've used Amplify, thank you for using Amplify. We're super excited to talk about Gen 2. And for the folks who are new to Amplify, we'll kind of start with, before we kind of dive into the demo, we'll actually kind of start with a little bit of why we built this new generation of Amplify. So Amplify serves front-end developers, and what we've observed over the past decade is that front-end developers have become full-stack developers. And there are a couple of technological advancements that have made this happen. So if you look at the architecture of a full-stack application, on the front end we have, you're building your front end with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then there are frameworks like React and Tailwind that help you accelerate building your front end. And in the back end, historically, we've always had where we store our data. We've got our databases, servers, server-side languages where we write our custom business logic, and APIs to access data. Now, this historically would always be servers and required teams to manage and scale infrastructure. But over the past 5 years, this has changed. Well, actually longer, because Node has become ubiquitous over the past decade. Now developers can write JavaScript in the front end and write JavaScript in the back end. We've had a serverless movement, so what that allows developers to do is to actually just focus on their code without worrying about infrastructure at all. And that's really been a game changer for full stack development. Because now, to build an app, you don't need to be an infrastructure expert. And on the API side, we've seen the evolution of APIs to include GraphQL. It really gives front-end developers control over how they access their data. So what we've observed is that front-end developers are now driving cloud decisions, and that's kind of why we built Amplify. We built Amplify to make it easy for front-end developers to build these full-stack apps. So we built these tools to cover the life cycle of application development, but there's 3 core kind of pillars we have. The first one's around building a backend. Second is around hosting. And the third is around UI building. And we'll walk through the tools a little bit in terms of these are all the Gen 1 tools that we offer. And we'll walk through the history of how we got here to Gen 2. So we started in 2017. We launched the Amplify JavaScript client library. It was a way for you to connect to your AWS services, and it gave you a simple, intuitive API interface that lived on top of the AWS SDK. So you could run. You basically had an auth API. And they were all use case specific. So you could start with auth, GraphQL, REST, and your API surface was simple. We expanded support over the course of time to include mobile and cross-platform as well. And in 2018, this was a big launch for us. We launched the Amplify CLI. This was a tool that developers could install locally and run simple commands like amplify add auth. And we'd deploy CloudFormation stacks, generate infrastructure as code templates, and actually give developers features like environments and functions and a whole bunch of other features that developers could use locally. Alongside that, we also launched Amplify Hosting in 2018. So this gave developers a way to host their front ends, but also set up full stack CI/CD, which made it easy to set up production, staging, test environments, just simply by connecting your Git repository. And in 2020, we launched part 1 of Amplify Studio, as the artist formerly known as Admin UI for the folks who've used Amplify for some time. It was a visual companion to the CLI, so you could it gave you a visual way to configure your data model, and then it also gave you the ability to manage and administrate your backend. So we had file, data, and user management. So this is an example where users can just automatically generate seed data for their backend. So if I have a data model that's got for home listings, you can generate that just at a click of a button. And in 2022, we focused on UI building. So we gave developers the ability to go from Figma designs to actual React components. And we also had a UI component library that gave connected components. So what you see on the right here is the authenticator component that developers can just write a single line of code and get entire sign-in, sign-up workflows configured in a matter of minutes. And we've seen hundreds of thousands of customers use Amplify to accelerate time to market. And our customers of all sizes. Buzzbee is a startup. They built an app, a mobile app that automatically detects crashes. So if you're on a bike ride and you fall, it'll automatically send a notification to your friends and families. They used Amplify to accelerate time to market in 3 months, and they saved tons of money in development costs. And then the other end of the spectrum, we have customers like Amazon Music. Amazon Music uses us for a cloud playlist feature. So if you're queuing songs in a playlist with friends, that also syncs offline and syncs back to the cloud. And we've had individual developers also adopt Amplify, and we continue to interact with developers online through Twitter, Discord, and we see a lot of engagement online as well with the developer community. Over the course of the past 5 to 6 years, we've synthesized feedback, and I think it really there's three key things we kind of taken away. The first piece of feedback is customers have loved how Amplify CLI and Studio's abstraction works. When they're taking the beaten path, it almost feels like cheating. This is a customer quote, not mine, to get going really fast. But it's also usually coupled with a strong interest to understand what's going on under the hood. What we've heard from customers is, especially when they're trying to modify the backend to do something that is outside the beaten path, it became challenging. And a big reason for this was because our tooling generated CloudFormation files, configuration files that required customers to really understand how the whole system worked. The second piece of feedback we heard was customers wanting a faster local development experience. So while working in their IDE, customers wanted to be able to deploy changes fast without waiting on long CloudFormation deployments. And they also wanted to work in a way where they were not going to clobber their teammate. So for example, if Renee and I are working on a feature, we can both work in our isolation. And the third real area was around getting to production. We had the workflow to deploy multiple environments. Developers really appreciated the fact that they could set up these multiple environments. But often from moving from a lower to upper environment, from like dev to staging to prod, required configuration that spanned the CLI and the console. So customers wanted like a cleaner workflow to get to production. Additionally, they also wanted flexible deployment options. Hey, we work with the monorepo. We have a separate front-end team and a separate back-end team. We have custom pipelines. How do we set up this? We would like to set up the same kind of workflow that's in Amplify hosting, but with our own teams that mirror our own team's operations. And those 3 points of feedback were really what we synthesized into Amplify Gen 2, which is a code-first developer experience that we're now going to be demoing, and I'm going to hand it over to Renee to take it forward.
Yeah, awesome. So let's really focus on what a code-first developer experience is. And there's a lot to cover here today, but the first thing really that's fundamentally changing is TypeScript will be the definition language for your entire backend. That gives you code completions as you go, so that's really helpful. The second part of it is we're going to keep on the Git-based full-stack CI/CD workflow that we have from Gen 1. That means you connect your repository, and we'll deploy it on every commit for certain branches that you want it for. The third part is we've looked at all the files that Amplify has been generating into the developer machine and really taking a hard look at how to make them easier to reason about. The fourth thing is around the per developer sandbox environment. We want to create an isolated environment where every developer can iterate on their features without having to tamper with other people's code. And no presentation is complete without generative AI, so we've also made sure that all of this is trained with Amazon Code Whisperer. So if you use Amazon Code Whisperer, the suggestions are going to be awesome. And Nikhil alluded earlier, we've had a few different console experiences. We're now bringing them all together into one. It's just going to be easier to use for end users. You can deploy additional AWS services as you need, and you can also gain all the flexibility that you care about, which you can extend via CDK or other infrastructure as code solutions. So Let's first talk about how do we set up this new code-first developer experience. What does it mean when you have an application UI and really want to start layering cloud functionality? In this new world, we're simplifying the setup experience to a simple command. It's just npm create amplify at latest. And unlike the current generation, we're installing the Amplify dependencies directly to your project and not globally on your local machine. That means between different projects, you can version these independently. So you can just add that. We create a few files, only 5, and you can incrementally extend it with additional functionality. And so take a look at these different files. These files are structured in the same way as we do in Gen 1. People love that we offer a use case-based developer experience, and we're taking that forward. So you can define your user directory and federated identity configurations in the auth/resources.ts file, and same with your data resources, which includes your database tables and Lambda functions. And so your front end then ultimately gets connected up with that. And just to kind of put it into perspective of how much we have changed, so this is Gen 1 on the left side with the same functionality as Gen 2 on the right-hand side. And there's no reduction in functionality. We have reduced from 104 files down to 5, and it's easier to reason about, and we're going to see that in a bit. Okay? And so, yeah, let's do a demo. Okay.
You got to do that.
Oh, one second. Do you see the screen? Okay, so this is the app that we're going to be building today. So this is a Hacker News clone, my favorite website for thoughtful discourse. And so in here, we're going to be able to, yeah, one guy laughed. I love it. So in here, you're going to be able to see different articles that people can post. You can see comments that people have. You can create new posts and also just sign in, sign out, do the regular cloud workflows. Now, this entire app is a Next.js application, and right now it's just UI code. There's no cloud logic yet, so everything that I've just shown you is hard-coded. And so now let's layer in some cloud functionality to the workflow. As I mentioned earlier, all I have to do is run a simple command to scaffold out the Amplify functionality.
Make it bigger.
And when I run this, okay. And when I run this, it is simply just creating a few files in my dependency folder. So I've got the Amplify folder here with a auth resource, the data resource, and then like a backend file that just brings the backends, the different categories together. Let's take a look at these individually. So in auth, we're trying to really create a use case-oriented approach so that, for example, if you want to configure email authentication, you can just say, yeah, email is true. And you can kind of expand that as well with additional settings as well. So you want to say phone number is true. Now you have phone authentication backends. You can also expand this with additional functionality that you might need, like, for example, email body verification, or using external providers, like social providers like login with Amazon, Google sign-in, like your usual suspects when you have social login. We've obviously also got other features like multi-factor authentication, but that's going to be a little bit outside of today's session. The next thing I want to show you is around the data definition. We really want to make sure you can model your application data model as if it is just objects from your client side code. So for example, in this case, this is a data model for to-do apps. So I can say to-do is a model that contains content and has which is a string, and with an authorization rule where if I'm assigned a to-do, I get to do everything with it, create, read, update, delete. But if I'm only a publicly unauthenticated user, I should only be able to read from it, right? Now, we're not building a to-do application. We're building a Hacker News clone. So let's take a look at our application code and try to model now our backend to meet the application requirements of my front end. If I go to my application code now, you can see that I've got my posts here, and posts have an ID, title, link, and some sort of comments. So I'm just going to have my application UI code on the left side and my backend code on the right side and try to model it the same way. So I'm not doing a to-do app, so I'm having a post app. And I need a title, and I need a link, which is a URL. And I will have a comments, which is has many relationship with a comment model. So now I realize I need to also add a comment model. And I'm really just using the benefits of TypeScript here to use type completion to kind of let me type in the next thing that I need to worry about. And I'm also going to copy the same authorization rules over, so that just works. OK, so this is as simple as defining a database with an API that exposes create, read, update, and delete operations. Like it is, we literally just look at what our frontend needed and created a backend for it. Now, I'm going to just start now. I'm now just going to start a thing called our sandbox, which is the mechanism in which we'll allow developers to iterate on their backend continuously over time. Before we jump into that, let's, oh, sorry.
Okay, it seems to be working.
You want me to?
Profile can't.
OK, there you go. Always make sure you deploy to the right region. So let's come back to the slides for a second and talk about this full stack iteration experience that we're going to show you in a second. So when developers are telling us that they want to iterate on their backend, it is really important that when they develop in a team environment that everybody gets their isolated cloud sandboxes. So when I ran that command, npx amplify sandbox, it creates an isolated cloud sandbox with real AWS resources that I should use for development purposes. And it gives you a few benefits by really having a development-focused cloud sandbox. For example, we can do resource hot swaps. That means when you make a change on the backend code locally, within 10, 20 seconds, we'll make the change in the cloud. So you can feel like this really fast iteration experience. The next thing that we want to really solve is the waiting time that developers have to do, and just how much active time they need to do to iterate on their backend. So for example, I'm going to take Gen 1 here. If I add a database table, I needed to create a GraphQL file, which is now replaced with TypeScript. I need to run a command called amplify push. This command would take a few minutes to run. And then only after the command has completed, I can look at my front-end code and update that, and then validate in my browser. So every iteration cycle is measured in minutes in this environment. And this is you have to keep going doing this. So you have to edit a file again if you want to update a field, push, wait, update the front-end code, and then validate in your browser. And then the next change happens. So this workflow, we wanted to completely rethink and just build a better experience with Generation 2. So with Amplify Generation 2, we're really introducing this concept of a cloud sandbox that you run once. So you run this npx amplify sandbox command one time at the start of your development, and it's going to watch for changes to your backend definitions. And as those changes come in, you can just immediately update the front-end code. There's actually no waiting period for deployments that you need to take care of. So updating a database table, updating a field, adding authorization rules have now compressed from 5-minute or multi-minute iteration cycles down to a few seconds. And the best way to show this experience and the slickness of it is in a demo. Cool. So let's start looking at our application use case. Let's try to get this sign up and sign in and sign out experience up and running. So in here, there is a login component with email, password, and knows I needed to and also an environment where I need to create an account. So the way I edit that file is by looking at our application's login page. In our login page, we've introduced this authenticator component, which is a React component that actually understands what my backend definition is. It knows that I have set up that I want to do email authentication, and dynamically scaffolds out the login UI for me. This authenticator component can be fully styled to match your brand. You can see I have used just like a common style here. That is the default that we offer, but if I comment that out, you'll see that it will look a little bit more scrappy, and you can style this to however you want as well. And the other thing that this authenticator component gives me is the ability to understand some of the lifecycle hooks that my application provides. So for example, I want to know that if I'm authenticated, they should redirect me to a particular page. And if I'm unauthenticated, it should handle the experience differently. Now, in here, the other component that we should look at is the indicator of the profile. You can see I've currently hard-coded Renee up there, and that's just because that's pure UI. But we can actually make that also work with real cloud logic. So in this application component in here, you can see we've got the login user information. I'm just going to remove the default there and talk through the capabilities with our Amplify libraries to become aware of your backend. So it knows that my backend exists. I can actually get the current user information. And I'm running this inside this hook, inside this run with server Amplify context function. This particular function is specifically designed for Next.js and allows us to have a first-class support for Next.js. And it allows basically every single request within it to run in isolation of each other. It's a security feature we actually worked really hard on because it's a big problem in server-side rendered applications where you get cross-token contamination. So basically, this allows me to have this isolated environment where I then get the user information and then can sign in. OK. So now let's try to sign up in a real-world environment. This is all real code, real time, so we got to thank the demo gods today. OK, so that went through. And you can see this authenticator component handles multi-factor authentication and also email verification. And it would also work with like SMS and so on and so forth. OK, wow. This is always the trippiest part of the demo because I'm never quite sure if we'll get the email through. Maybe I'll try to. Do you want me to use it?
Give it a few.
Give it a few seconds?
Yeah.
OK. This is the part of the live demo where I get nervous. We talked about earlier if there's any concern. This is. OK, we got it. Nice. OK, so there you go. Perfect. Now I'm authenticated, and if I look at just this experience, I'm now fully signed in as a user, and I can kind of continue the workflow. Or actually, yeah, just making sure that I really am. Oh no. So I think I didn't do the auto redirect. OK, now I'm signed in. Great. So now let's look at our data experiences for a second. So for example, how do we actually show the application data that allows me to create a new post or sign in as an end user? If we look at our application data model, we have designed it fully in TypeScript. That means on the client side, we can actually stream in the types from our data backend. These types from our data backend allows us to get code completion on the client side. So we don't have to do any guessing work around how to make API calls or how to fetch data. We'll be able to basically generate these data clients that allows me to fetch data with ease. Let me go to my. Let's go to this page first, where we have a form where we need to create a new post for. So as I mentioned, we need to import that particular data client. In this case, I need to be an authenticated client. I import it, and I just let type completion do the work for me. You can see I don't need to learn any special API routes that I've hard-coded as strings anywhere. It is strictly enforced in the programming language itself. And then in here, I can see what I can pass in here. I should pass in the link. And link I get from the form data. I call it URL here. So let me enter that to string. And the other thing I need is the title. And with that, I'm just going to call that title to string. OK. Next, I'm just going to log the information here so that we can see the data that we created and if we also have any errors. OK. So let's go to our application, and let's hope this works. So full stack. And I'm going to use this URL. Hit submit. And if we go back to our application now, you can see we successfully submitted this particular record to a database. So I think there's probably no other way that I could possibly imagine AWS where it can create so quickly a database, set up the authorization logic for it, get an API endpoint, and call the API within one application. Next, we should probably fix up this page. You can see it's a little bit iffy there with still some hard-coded content, and let's just fetch data from there. Cool. So this is my hard-coded content right now. I'm just going to replace all of this. And I'm going to make sure I can fetch the posts. And in this case, I'm going to use the public client that I talked about earlier for like read-only access. I can get the post and then get the list of those posts. And if you look into here, oh, there's like some errors here. Something is not quite right. So it looks like if we hover over here, oh, on the backend definition, it actually told me that the value could be null, but my front end didn't expect that. So the TypeScript programming language actually enforces correctness across these two different boundaries. And so there's a few ways to fix that. I'm going to actually go and find my data.resource file and just make sure all the errors get addressed. So in here, the title should be required, and the link should be required. Okay, and if I hit save now, great. Like on the left side, errors are resolved. But if I look at the other page, oh no, the new page, I didn't handle that case there. So this is really the fast-paced iteration that we're talking about. You define your backend, the IDE immediately, instantaneously tells you where there could be potential errors, and you can address it without ever having to go through a slow cycle of like deploy, wait, update, and then validate. So in this case, I'm just going to pass in this link as a default, and good old trusty empty string as the required value. OK, so now I've fixed my application backend. And if you see, as I was making these changes, it was updating the backend for me. So within 18 seconds in the background, it was updating the cloud backend. So if you go to the AWS console, these resources are updated already. But I don't feel that because I'm already in the flow of editing just the front end and backend together in my IDE. So in this case now, you can see the application data is getting loaded. There's some little error here. Somehow it says one comment, even though I didn't really create a comment just yet. And this is just due to a small functionality that I want to show you today. So one thing we talked about is that our posts can have many comments. So traditionally speaking, you would want to be able to load them together. So there's two ways to load things in Amplify. You can either lazily load things by calling the comments as a function. But one thing that happens here is we create a waterfall of a network request. So for every single post, I fetch every single function. And if I have a lot of posts, that's going to be very slow. We want to make sure that you have the option to do both eager and lazy loading. So in fact, we support a functionality called selection set, which allows you to use full-on type-completed string values here to say exactly the data that you want to receive back from the system. So for example, I already said I wanted all the comments. My application needs the links. Let's see, where are the additional errors? ID and title is also required. And now my application is making a single request, but fetches all the necessary comments that are needed for me in order to calculate, for example, how many different comments there are in this particular application. If I now refresh the page, you'll see it says 0 up there. And I can continue going forward in here and see how to update the subsequent pages real quick, just so we can see the application running live. As I mentioned, you get the use cases of CRUDL operations. So that means you can do list and get operations. I'm going to get the public client again. Just let the code completion do the work for me. And I'm going to pass in the ID that I have from my URL route. So this particular URL route is getting passed here. And I'm just going to get the post. And now if I go in here, you can see the little heart that I used earlier is now changed to loves. And so this application is now using the real backend data. There's another functionality here around adding comments to it. The thing with like comments, and because this is my favorite website, is it's a lot of like passion in Hacker News comments, right? So we want to make sure that these comments stream in real time as well. And everything I've just shown you right now is requests that are happening on a server-side rendered application. But we also have a great client-side real-time experience to consistently fetch your data and set up the real-time subscription. Let's go there real quick and find our trusty component to fetch the live comments. So so first, I'm just going to generate a new API client that I'll need for my backend. So in here, I'm going to import the generate client from AWS Amplify data, and then import the type for the schema from our backend. Data. Amplify, oh, sorry, no. Amplify data / resource. Oh, I love type completion. Fixes so many errors for me. And then I'm going to put my comments into a state. This just lets React know what to render in a given time. And then the last part I want to show you is probably my favorite feature, I'm not going to lie. I can actually go in here and create a, from the client again, find the comments, and I could list them, but then that would not be real time. I can actually do a thing called an observe query. And this observe query allows me to get a real-time feed of the data as it gets updated, deleted, and modified. So in here, if I subscribe to this change, I'm just going to get all the items back from that change and set the comments to the items that are returned. And because I'm doing a subscription, I also want to make sure I tear down the subscription after it's not needed. So unsubscribe there. OK, cool. So let's see what's going on here. It's a little TypeScript error. I didn't pass an empty array, classic mistake. And that's all resolved. Great. So now let's try to add a few comments in here. Hello world, right? And see that application refresh live. And as the event comes back and round trips, it's hi, I love frontend. I mean, I really do. And if I add it, it's just going to be real time. And as it's added, confirmed in a database, it's going to be coming back here on my UI. Cool. So this is just like a very quick way that we have shown you how to create your application backend and connect it up with your front end and iterate together. The demo itself was just a few minutes, so it is really awesome to see how quickly you can create all these cloud resources and really hydrate your UI with cloud logic. Cool. And for the last, there's also a few other features I didn't get to show that was available in Gen 1 that I just couldn't fit into the demo. We still support our capabilities to generate UI from your data model. So if you have a form that needs to that can update or create a data model, you can just instantly generate that as like a React component and use it in your code. Our UI building capabilities from Figma to code. We've actually worked with Figma to publish a official Figma plugin, so you can use this completely within Figma, and you don't have to go to a different console or a different tool to just get the generate UI, like live functioning UI code for your React applications. And so the other part that we'll also support is the ability to go beyond what we just shown you today. Like, AWS has a lot of services, and they all are really, really powerful. And we want to make sure that there are no limits to your Amplify project. Amplify Gen 2 is completely built on top of CDK, and CDK supports all the AWS services that you're probably falling in love with already. So you can actually extend, for example, the Amplify stack using CDK and add location services to it, or any other AWS resource you could think of. And the last part of our demo today will be around how we go to production with our application. Everything I've just shown you was in development mode. We're really optimized on a fast-paced iteration. But there's a few additional requirements for production. And so, Nikhil, take it away.
All right, good job, Renee. I'm glad the demo worked out. So hope the final demo works out too.
Yes.
So what we just saw was completely local, right? So we're working locally, working on your front end. Think about the cloud sandbox like your backend dev server. So everything working locally. But now you want to deploy like a new feature that you want to share across your team. So with Gen 2, we've introduced this concept of full stack environments. So that map one-to-one to Git branches in your repository. So let's say this is your dev team, and you have two branches. You have a main and a dev. You can literally connect your main branch and your dev branch, and you get two full stack environments deployed, zero config, as we'll walk through in the demo. So what happens is you connect your main branch, and we deploy a main backend, and then we deploy and host your front end. And similarly with dev, you can set up your dev branch, and you get a dev full stack environment. For the folks folks familiar with Amplify, in Gen 1, you're required to have a lot more configuration, where you have to configure a Git branch, you have to configure a backend environment, link the two together, set up service roles, and then also make make specific changes in the CLI when you're pushing changes from staging to production. In this workflow, this is how Git operates. So if you're going to move from staging to production, create a PR to prod, or if it's your main branch, create a PR to your main branch, merge it, it'll trigger a build. So any updates that you made in your dev branch will deploy to prod. There's no extra configuration required. And a piece of feedback that I didn't cover in the initial segment was that a lot of customers, especially ones who are new to Amplify, feel there's a lot of overhead for them to learn the different tools we have. We walked through, we had Studio, we have CLI, we have a console, we've got hosting. So what we've done is really centralize the experience in a unified console. So this is really like the next version of the Amplify console. So it gives you a central place to not just manage your Git branches and your hosting setup, but also all the backend resources that you deploy. We'll see that shortly. And we've also launched, this is one of my favorite features, we've basically centralized environment variables and secrets. So now the way for you to manage your any sort of custom environments, let's say you've got specific database URLs or secrets that you want to manage, you enter them in the console and you can access them locally. So in this example right here, we're actually setting a secret and we can access them via like a secret function that we've made available. Cool, so let's go ahead and demo getting René's application to production.
Oh.
All right, let me switch this. All right, so I'm going to kill this sandbox, and as you can see, it asked me whether I would like to delete the resources. Now, generally, if I'm done developing, I can just go ahead and delete resources. I don't need to keep them lying around. And if I restart development, we'll just spin up resources again. But this is optional. If you prefer, if you're like, I'm taking a pause, I'm coming back, you can just say, keep these resources up and running. But what I'm going to do, so we've already pushed the code to Git. So this is already the code for that René demoed is already in my Git account. So I just go visit the AWS console. And then from the AWS console, I go to Amplify. I want to make sure I'm in the right region. Yep, in the right region. And as you can see, this is the existing console. For the customers familiar with Amplify, this is the existing console. We basically built a new console that's only right now available for the Gen 2 experience, where the UI is we've built the UI from ground up. So at this place, over here, I get the option to either start from a starter. So if you're starting the console and you don't have anything, you can just deploy our next starter. We're going to populate this with more templates by our GA date. But since René already built an app, what I'm going to do is go ahead and connect that Git repository in this workflow. Oh.
Everybody look away right now. And then the two-factor auth is going to kick in.
This is the hard, but this is the...
This is always the hardest part of the demo.
Oh, I think I got to hit the send SMS button.
Now you got to make sure your phone is not on Do Not Disturb. Okay. You successfully entered your code.
Awesome. Great, so now it's listing my repository. So as you can see, the first one, this is the reInvent demos, is where we pushed the code to. And now we're connecting the main branch because we pushed the code to the main branch. Now, as you can see, this whole experience is zero config. As a developer, I don't really need to do anything. Like, I'm just clicking buttons. We auto-detect that this is the next JS app front end, and this is using Amplify on the back end. And we've also got a new service role that automatically deploys the resources for you, and it's also scoped down to have CloudFormation access. All right, I'll hit save and deploy. Hello? Yeah. Okay. All right, and that's deploying my app. And as you can see, a build is ongoing. So what I also did, I kind of cheated ahead of time. I deployed an app that's already been deployed. So why don't I just kind of pivot to that? So this is the same version of the application that's finished deploying. And as you can see in the central console, I can access all my hosting settings. So if you've used Amplify hosting before, you have your access control, your environment variables, and like secrets is the new feature we just introduced. And as you can see, there are some features that are still in development. Custom domains, you're going to be able to add your custom domains here as well. And when I click into my main branch, that's when I see my build. And as you can see, my build has successfully deployed. And it's deployed its own set of backend resources as part of the build. And one piece of feedback, customers gave us from, it's like, hey, Amplify does a lot of awesome things, but there's a lot of resources that get deployed to my account. I'd love to be able to see them. So we've made it easy to be able to actually see the list of resources. So Renee's application actually deployed a whole bunch of things, right? So if I want to find like the IAM roles that we set up, you can very easily find them. As you can see, this is a lot of the heavy lifting that we do that you would otherwise have to kind of build yourself. And then for the use cases that we kind of have first party support for, we actually offer management experience as well. So if I go to user management, I can actually create a new user. Manage the user here, so I can see if the user has members to any groups. I can add groups. Let's create an admin group. And then I can actually add the user to the group, right? So similarly for data, we have, if you're coming from Studio, we're bringing our data manager capability, so you'll be able to browse your data directly in the console. This is not ready yet, but like we give you access to the API playground. So this links out to the AppSync console, where you can query everything. You can basically query or mutate your schema if you want to test your backend. But having said that, what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to build all these experiences inline into the console. So you kind of have a central place where you can actually admin your full stack app, but also get to the underlying services if you need to, right? That's kind of the general philosophy we take. We're trying to give you a really great like first party experience, but give you access to everything underneath and make it visible to you. And another cool feature I just wanted to show here was the ability for us to deploy to show how easy it is to set up multiple environments, right? So in this case, let me actually go to this repository. All right, and what I'm going to do really quickly, before I do that, sorry, 1 second. I'm going to set, we have this feature called pattern matching. So I'm going to set a pattern, so any branch that matches star in my repository will automatically get deployed. So now what I'm going to do is I set that pattern, and now when I go to my repository, let's just quickly create a dev branch. And if I come back to this application, there you go. We have a dev branch deploying. Now this is going to deploy an entirely new set of resources, right? And this will drastically simplify the promotion workflow, because moving from dev to prod is basically what you do in Git. And once we have PR previews as one of the items that you see coming soon, this will work with previews, so you can spin up ephemeral environments. So you create a pull request, you'll have an ephemeral environment that stood up, merge the pull request, PR is closed, resources are deleted. So that's coming in the pipeline as well. So I haven't demoed the secrets experience, but the secrets experience is actually my favorite one, because you can define everything centrally, and there's no issue with like Git conflicts, Git merges. It's all managed via code. So just to kind of do a recap of what we just went through, right? We went through starting. Let's actually link it to the feedback. So the first area of feedback was too much magic. So what we've done is we've made TypeScript available for the full stack with a file-based convention. So now, as a developer, what you're doing is you're being very intentional about what you want to add to your project. You're not starting with an abstraction that then leads to a whole bunch of files that you don't understand. So you know everything that's getting added to your project. It's predictable and maintainable. Second, we've got the sandbox, the cloud sandbox, for faster iteration. So in this video here, this change will take between 15 to 20 seconds. And we've been working with the CDK team on this. So if you're familiar with CDK and coming from CDK, this is basically built off the hot swap feature. And we've made this workflow, a workflow here that used to take about 120 seconds.
Yeah, 120 seconds.
Now takes between, in this case, 13 seconds, but usually between 10 to 20 seconds. So it really improves your local developer experience. And we're going to continue to expand the use cases that we support hot swap for. And finally, I think that the third area was around feedback for production, like making production simpler, deployment simpler. We've reimagined the full stack deployment experience. You start with your Git branch, you deploy your Git branch, you get full stack apps, and we built workflows for you to share resources across different branches too if you don't want to deploy a new set of resources. This works with custom pipelines. That's something I actually didn't cover. So you can, if you're working with Code Catalyst or you're working with Code Pipeline, and you want that control, you can use we have npm packages that you can just insert in your build spec, and you get this. You basically will get the same experience with a little more configuration. The benefit you get with our unified console is that it's all kind of zero config, and centralizing secrets is also a way we've kind of really simplified our production rollout and made it flexible enough that it can fit any of your workflows. And that's it. We're super excited for you all to try out Amplify Gen 2. And we've got a little bit of time left, and we kind of were very intentional about that, so we could get some, we could field questions from folks in the audience. And I see a couple of hands up already. Maybe I should go. Is there a mic that we can take around, or no?
I think we can just repeat the question.
Okay.
Mike. Yeah.
Sure. Why don't you start there?
The areas you showed in the console that say coming soon, that's just the console functionality, correct? Like those things could be created for CDK constructs today in the Amplify code?
Yes, correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
It's just the console.
Like the pull request preview was one
Yeah.
example. Like that is already supported in Gen 1. It's just not in the new reimagined console yet.
So for example, like the secrets management is really talking about a one-stop shop, but it's a front to the secrets management service, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. Yep. And we have a format with which we create those secrets, so we know what those secrets are for the Amplify project. Back there.
Any chance to bring in like a visualization of what the different deployments are costing, like in pipeline?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if you saw today the AWS console launched this feature around called, I think it's like My Application.
My applications, yeah.
So our plan is to basically give you, to tag these resources in a way that this is your Amplify application, and then it'll link to like Cost Explorer and things like that. In general though, when you're developing with Amplify, it's like, I think unless you're using something like Searchable, almost all features are free.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can get started for free.
Yeah. Sure, right there.
How we can link user with the data, like who updated, who created the data?
Yeah, so in my demo earlier, I have a little authorization rule modifier as well on my data model. And there's one authorization rule that's called owner auth. And when you add that, every time you create a record as a signed-in user, we actually attach that owner information to the record. So then you can apply filters based on that and say a group of people that owns this record can update and delete them, or any additional rules. And this all supports also in a real-time environment.
So my question is not related to authorization. My question is related to, let's say, we want to maintain a data model created by, updated by. So you want to link only to user with the data.
Oh, so that is, I can show you real quick. Yeah. I might need your fingerprint.
Oh yeah.
Okay, did this, oh, looks like we couldn't, let's see if we can get the slides up again. Oh, I need to change keyboard layout. Okay, so you can see this owner authorization rule. In fact, I'll let our inline documentation do the work. So it basically allows you to set access on a per user basis. And when you then end up creating a record, we attach that information to this data record. Right? So now you have linked the end user information, like the signed incognito user, to the data that you're owning.
So that way we can display the front end, right?
Exactly. Exactly, yeah. So that's where you can set that up. And this supports a variety of combinations as well. Like it supports a list of owners, so you can say, you and I, we are allowed to edit this one particular data model. Or it supports Cognito user groups, and that happens in both a static way, where you say all admin group members can do it, or dynamically defined. So if I'm part of part of like an editor group, I can say specifically this data record at runtime should have editor access, and after I'm done with it, only the readers should have access. Like, so there's these kind of capabilities you can build in. Hey, right here.
Authentication, can it integrate easily with like B2C or Entra ID?
Yeah.
Standard JWT?
Yeah. So the question was, how does authentication integrate with other providers effectively, right? So we support connections to OIDC compliant providers. So we actually have an integration with Auth0 that you can look up in our documentation. And we support that in both configurations. Either you want that to be linked up on the Cognito side, or you can actually use a custom token and credentials provider on the client side, so you can reuse the native SDKs that you might be using from another auth provider.
My question is related. So I have a use case where the Cognito user pool, whose scope is broader than just the Amplify app that we use, so it might be used here and elsewhere too. And so would it be appropriate to define the user pool as part of the Amplify project? That's sort of assumed to go and do that. Would that use case require treating it as a custom external provider, or is there, because it is an AWS service, is there a CDK-ish way
To kind of reference things, yeah. Oh, you might want to fix the slides real quick. So on the question was, if I have already a user pool defined, can I bring it into the project? The answer is yes at GA time. We're actively working on that functionality. So in Gen 1, you can already run Amplify import off, and there you can bring in your existing Cognito user pools. And you have a little bit more burden of like configuration, but it is oftentimes the right choice when you already have existing resources. Okay.
Right there.
So the recommendation was to use TypeScript.
What's the question?
So the question was that we use TypeScript here through and through. Like, how do you adopt usage for other platforms that might be in completely different languages? I think maybe I can talk about JavaScript real quick, because that's probably the elephant in the room. What if I just use JavaScript but don't use TypeScript? Everything you see today is compatible with JavaScript. That's kind of like, TLDR. And you also get all the type completions with JavaScript as well. So we use a JS doc string that you just have to insert one time. It looks like a comment, and now your JavaScript is fully, it gives you type completion as you use it. You want to talk about maybe like mobile support or?
Yeah, so for mobile, is your question for a specific language? Or okay, yeah, I mean, I think, so what we're doing is that we're making all these available as CDK constructs. Now, this is not available just yet across the board, but because they're CDK constructs, they're also going to be able to be generated in different languages. So that could be a path to, if there's a specific language preference that you have, you can use the CDK construct. But what we're also going to build tooling, like as you know, with Studio we have a visual experience, right? Where that allows you to basically configure things visually. So we will build like helper tooling that helps you generate some of the TypeScript code if you're not familiar with TypeScript.
But how does it solve the problem? Let's say backend is Python and the front end is say, Type.
Oh, the code. Okay, so yeah. So the question is, what happens if I then author, for instance, using the CDK construct in a different language than what my front end is, right? So the underlying protocol that we're using is GraphQL, nonetheless. So in this case, in your particular case, you can use any code generation tool that is compatible with GraphQL, and there's a range of these. We offer built-in code generation for Android, iOS, Flutter, Java, Kotlin, Swift, and Dart, and JavaScript and TypeScript. So you can use that, or you can use any off-the-shelf GraphQL code generation tools, and there's a range of them. It's compatible with them all. Yeah.
Just back there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for the great demo session.
Thanks.
My question is about the custom domain, which says coming soon.
Is the question that the custom domain that says coming soon? So the custom domains are for your will be applied to your front end. So there's two parts of it. There's the front end and the back end, right? So the front end is also hosted. I should have actually clicked on it to show you that the application is hosted. But you can add a custom domain to your front end. And as of now, we're not doing anything to the back end, but you can also set up rewrite rules so your front end can point to your back end APIs. But it's all kind of linked. The custom domain feature is linked to the front end. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And one more question about the editing pipeline of these all coming soon features.
I'm sorry?
The editing pipeline of all these coming soon features that you have listed.
Yeah. Oh, the when they're gonna. So everything in the console that's coming soon will land in by Q1. Our goal is to basically GA this functionality. In the first half of the year is when we're planning on GAing this functionality. But everything you saw on the console is actually actively being worked on right now, and we're going to start shipping them like incrementally as they get available. Yeah.
Cool. Up here in the middle.
My question is related to SNS and SQS. With the Gen 1, it was like the first time there was no command to create and update like a lot of issues with the Gen 1. What about in Gen 2?
In Gen 2, so we had the slide where you could write CDK inline in your project. So let me see if I can find that slide real quick.
It's going to be a fun click through.
Yeah. Right here. So you can write, so this example uses like location, like map services, but like our docs actually have an SNS example. But you can write this inline in your project. So unlike Gen 1, where you had to run like an add custom command, and then it almost created like a separate project inside your larger project, CDK versions and stuff like that, as you had to manage. You can run this inside your application, inside your Amplify backend code.
And I think the other benefit here is you can actually reference all the existing resources from Amplify that we generate. Because we end up creating CDK resources, you kind of see in like that resource.ts file, actually what's being returned at the end is a CDK construct. So you can reuse that construct's information like the API URL and stuff like that within your additional resources.
Saw there was some more. There was one more question.
Oh, I think over there.
Right. So not right now. We've launched this as a preview, but at GA we will offer a migration path to assist you to get from Gen 1 to Gen 2.
Okay. Any other questions?
Will there be releases in between now and general availability?
Yes.
Yeah.
Regarding those features?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to make features available as they
become
are cooked.
done. Yeah. First one next week, actually. Watch out. Cool. Any other questions? Oh, up front here? So the question was like, how does the backend functionality work in terms of the API contract, right? Yeah. So under the hood, it is a GraphQL API, but you really don't have to worry about the implementation details of that, right? You can see you are just like calling it as a function, right? So for you, that GraphQL protocol is completely abstracted away. Whether or not it uses REST or GraphQL in that case doesn't really matter for you as an end user. There's a few benefits though for it to have been built on GraphQL. Remember that like where like get the posts and then the comments individually, right? Like every time I would have to do that in a REST API, I would create this waterfall of network requests. But in this environment, due to the benefits of GraphQL, you can just make a single request and get all your data back that you need to hydrate your app. The second benefit that GraphQL provides just out of the box for you is real time. Like this is true real time. This is using WebSocket connections to receive messages, and then you can display that in real time, not like HTTP streaming approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, but where do we control that chain throughout the rest?
Yeah, so the question is like, how do you, for instance, use some of this with a REST API? So a lot of these frameworks nowadays built in a API route functionality, so this is actually fully compatible with that as well.
Yeah, so actually with hosting Next App on AWS, we offer managed, we basically offer you the API routes feature built in. So that would be one way for you to, get a REST API especially if you're just proxying to a function.
Yeah. Cool. I think that's it. Nikhil and I are going to still probably hang around a little bit up here. So if you have any questions you want to ask us privately.
Yeah, thank you so much for showing up.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.